I'd like to introduce today's presenters. I have Knowledge Infusion CEO Jason Averbook on the line, and I believe, Jason, you're calling in from San Francisco, right?
Thank you very much for the invitation and the introduction.
Great for being here. And I have Mike Brennan on the line, who's Director of KI OnDemand Service, and Mike is calling in from Boston. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Blake.
I'm good. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks to everyone else out there.
As further ado, I'm going to hand the controls over to Jason Averbook.
Great, very much, Blake. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone joining the webinar today. The webinar, the first of a two-part series on the things from our 2011-2012 Resource Executive Talent Management Survey. Real survey that we've talked about, and the survey that we're going to be talking about today is broken up into multiple parts. It's broken up into definitely the people parts, the process parts, and the technology parts. Today we're going to start by giving some high-level information about what came out of the survey and some very important things that back to what you'll be able to use to start to develop your own talent management strategy in your organizations. And the second part of the webinar series will be to tie back into some more of the specific findings around various technologies that are being used, et cetera, et cetera. Real quick about Knowledge Infusion, and Micah will be talking about a lot of these things throughout the event today. What our organization focuses on and what we do is helping organizations, quote-unquote, achieve their vision. And Mike, go to the next slide, please. Every organization has their own vision. And, actually look at the four chevrons on the slide here. What those four chevrons tie to is the methodology that we use with all of the engagements that we work on. So first of all, helping organizations create strategy. Those strategies are talent management strategies or holistic overall unified HCM strategies, helping them create those strategies and validate those strategies. Second, helping them deploy those strategies and the technology that they choose to use with that. Third, during the outcomes and the progress of those strategies. And fourth, being able to sustain those strategies long term. Those are the four key tenets that make up all of the work we do at Knowledge Infusion. And throughout the event, what I'll be doing is adding some color based on what customers are doing to those strategies as well. So on to slide 8, if we could. And what I'll do at this point is turn this over to you to really talk about what the survey showed, who took the survey, and we'll start jumping into some of the findings.
And thanks again, everyone, for joining, and a special thanks to those who were nice enough to take the time out to complete the survey. In terms of who got input from, it was a fairly large survey sample, 442 people, most of whom are working at organizations headquartered in North America, responded to the web-based survey, running organizations big and small across vertical industries. You'd see in terms of the HR versus non-HR, at the bottom of the slide, did have a fairly good representation of non-HR folks, which was good. And in terms of the giveaways from the webinar, in addition to those that Blake mentioned, we'll make the raw survey results available in pivot tables if you want to slice the dice data by entry, by job title, and so forth. So anyone who's a data geek like me, happy to provide that tool to you. As mentioned, this is a two-part webinar series, and what Brennan told us in terms of key takeaways are as follows, and we'll get into a lot of the detail for part one in just a few minutes. But in terms of the 4 points under part one, the war talent is back on for anyone with open rec past their target time to hire date. I'm sure you can relate. And as the economy improves and skill shortages persist in certain areas, I'm sure the issue is only going to become larger, and we're certainly seeing it in our client base. As such, moving on to the second point, 2012 is somewhat bullish year for talent management investments, with spending increases expect across the board in terms of both building and buying talent. Number 3, talent is a seat at the table, in as much as talent has become an increasingly valued enterprise asset. Talent management is very much HR HR a seat at the table. Business leaders that we speak as part of the work that we do want to know how to better plan for the business needs, how to attract people to their organizations, how to engage, reward, and develop them. To do this, they need HR's help. They need the data. They need HR's expertise and counsel. And survey results certainly reflected that. And then lastly, today we'll cover take number 4. HR will have to work more collaboratively to keep that seat at the table. And most, if not all of you, buy into the idea that talent management is a business discipline HR program. Judging by the challenges that respondents indicated their organizations deal with when trying to manage talent, then for HR to work cross-functionally to offer business solutions is really apparent. So working cross-functionally both within HR, learning development, recruiting, compensation, and so forth, as well as better partnering with the business. As during part 2, we'll take a deep dive into workforce data and talent management technology, 2 ways that you see there. HR continues to invest in the cloud and talent management becoming more social and more mobile. So, the takeaway that the war for talent is on. You know, when we asked the survey respondents to respond to a series of agree, disagree statements, the clear indication of those headlines that we read on a day-to-day basis. And in terms of the slide that start on the left, overall, the results reflect the labor market. So I'll start with the first statement on the left. Agree, we have trouble filling a lot of roles because we cannot find the right candidates internally or externally. 60% agreed with this statement versus 36% who disagreed. Next statement, our workforce activity is maxed out. We need to bring on more people. So in terms of economic expansion and that translating into hiring, it's split. So again, bullish, not overly bullish. Next statement, it is easy to find and retain for most, if not all, jobs, given the high unemployment rate. 43% agreed with this statement, where 63% disagreed. So no matter the economy, it's always tough to find the best people, but to have 2/3 of the survey sample disagree with this statement, and almost quarters of them agree with the last statement. We have too many people, disagree with the last statement. We have too many people. We're not hiring very much at all. Certainly is indicative of an economy that's beginning to work and an HR challenge of finding the right people to take the right jobs at the right time. When we slide the data a bit, we found some differences with respect to those having the most trouble finding and retaining people. Highest amongst respondent organizations with 5 more employees, so large companies, and that's generally who KI works with. We work with companies of all sizes, but with a lot of household names, large organizations, and the survey resonates with me. In terms of vertical use, financial services, biopharma, tech, travel and transportation were most local in terms of not being able to find and retain people.
What's really important about this slide, and Mike, if you don't mind if I jump in really quickly, I mean, all of the work that we do, I mean, what we see constantly is that this war for talent, and I posted this on the Twitter stream, and I'll let you guys, I'm going to say here as well, we call this a war for talent or a war for skills or a war for knowledge, whatever you call it, it's very important to understand that it's here, okay? And the concept of it being here means that based on your organization, you need to understand what it looks like in your organization. Does it look like that we can't fill certain types of jobs? Does it look like a lot of people in the organization that we want to grow, yet we don't know how to grow them into future X, Y, Z's in the company? If you look at this and you look at the types of organizations that are having trouble finding people, those are organizations that are having trouble finding people in very, very high-skilled positions. It being said, if you saw the statistic that came out today that we have more open jobs in the U.S. than we have in the past 4 years, you can't find people. That is the classic definition of a war for skills. So technology, not technology. Forget the fact that we're talking about technology as part of this. Realize that your organization has to do something about this. Your organization isn't doing something about this right now based on the fact that retirement rates are going up, based on the fact that workers are getting older and that knowledge is walking out the door in organizations faster than it's coming in. Your organization will have a major competitive disadvantage if you don't get this to people's attention. And tying back to Mike's point, your whole HR management or HRM strategy has to be tied to how do I deal with my specific organization's talent and skills issue.
Great point, and then in times when you're dealing with a tight labor market and demands for people with certain skills without stripping supply, you'd expect to see more money being invested in talent management, and that's what our respondents indicated on the next slide here. So quick level set, a good amount of data here, and we will be distributing the slides after, but the blue bars indicate an increase in spending, green, no change in spend, and orange, a decrease in spend. Some don't there as well. In terms of the two big takeaways, when we ask the question of whether or not organizations will increase or decrease investments in these talent management areas, big takeaway number one, less than 10% of organizations plan to decrease spending in any area. So those little orange bars that you see across these different talent management functional areas, very few people plan to decrease spending. Good enough folks, is indicated by the green bars, looking for flat spend this year, but a good number of organizations represented do plan on increasing. Great expectations in terms of takeaway number two for increases are areas related to aligning and building internal talent, performance management, learning development, workforce analytics and planning, certainly an area that has been in demand in terms of our services. So a lot of organizations coming to us, whether it's related to the market consolidation or not, in the talent market, really just asking, how should we rendering data? What should we be measuring? How should we be better supporting decisions that need to be made by key stakeholders inside HR, outside HR, as individual employees trying to manage careers in organizations? What can we be doing to manage data and plan the workforce? So in terms of the big takeaways here, somewhat here, very exciting time to be in talent management because of the macroeconomic forces that Jason just mentioned, in addition to technology maturing.
If I could just add something here, what's really important to look at this is if you take a talent management strategy at its simplest level, and break it down into three key things. I'm either going to buy talent, build talent, or have talent. I'm either buy talent, build talent, or have it. If you look at the top four, it's here, learning, performance and goal, workforce analytics and planning and succession, they are all tied directly to build talent and have the talent. So do I even have the talent to know what the heck I need? And then second of all, how do I build it? What I already have. Look, sourcing and recruiting is down here. Either no change to spend or, there is an increase, but it's way on the list. We spent as an industry so much time on the recruiting act of process and technology that what we're finding is we're out of these people. And the only way I'm actually going to find these people is A, I have internally into the roles, or B, not as much focus on these overall massive recruiting efforts, but really thinking of ground-to-ground combat and saying the only way I'm going to find the only way I'm going to find my people going forward is to steal them. And it's not going to be a major technology spend to steal them. I'm going to win and steal them. We need to have these massive career sites. People aren't trolling career sites these days. They're out there, they're working. The ones that are skilled, your job will be to pull them away. So A, know what you need, and then B, go get them, but not all of your time and all of your money building these massive career sites in hopes that people just happen to stroll by and apply to the job.
In terms of this theme, or within a theme of measurement and data and analytics, I mean, for me, it serves two purposes, at least as it pertains to talent management. The first and more important of the two is to support short and long-term decision-making as it relates to managing people to better execute business and, to your point, their own careers. And the second one, and really what the focus of this slide on, is to demonstrate the return on investment in talent management programs. Are we successful as efforts of talent management for our business? So looking at the slide, question asked, please be able to tie your investments in talent management to any of the following benefits. This takes a lot of things, and as I mentioned, we'll be distributing it, but the three big takeaways for me, and for you to add, Jason, one, more than 1 in 3 are able to tie investments to some measurable benefit. It's okay. I'd love to see that number higher, and I think we'll get there. And that brings me to the second point, is that the majority of respondents want to measure more. And this is something that we hear from our clients on a day-to-day basis. The desire for measurement outstrips what can be provided today. So the investment in talent management technology in recent years, and for all the recent talk about big data and hiring, we're developing analytical skill sets in HR. The rate of what KI refers to as talent intelligence really hasn't lived up to the promise, and we've been promising for a long time. As a consulting firm and industry, our industry peers, we've been talking to it, but we have fallen short of it. And to your point earlier about what talent have, this third thing I find particularly troubling: visibility still despite technology implementation. If you look at the bottom row of the graphic, visibility into talent, only 26% of the sample said that they can tie their investments in talent management to greater visibility into their talent supply, a number that we all need to move.
If I could just add something, I mean, what's really important to understand here, guys, and this is why, from a Knowledge Infusion standpoint, we've switched from helping organizations select technology to helping organizations deploy and implement technology. And let me tell you why. The reason why is because of that third thing. You get so caught up in the vendor hype of what's the right technology to choose, and get so caught up in the software as a service model as to how fast can I implement this technology, that we get why we're doing it. Doing it to try to drive a strategic business driver within our organization. We're not doing it to cut costs. We're not doing it to get rid of paper. We're not doing it to make HR's life easier. We're doing it for a specific outcome. We have a specific outcome in mind. If you don't start your talent management process and technology deployment with that outcome in mind, and keep it in mind as your goal throughout the entire deployment/implementation, at the end of the day, you will have digitized everything that you're doing today. And that is why, in a nutshell, most talent management implementations and deployments have failed. I mean, if we see this slide where it says visibility still lacking despite technology implementations, we've implemented to get something live. We haven't implemented to drive an outcome. Our outcome needs to be back to that question: do I have the talent? And once I know that, am I going to buy or am I going to build? And how do I engage what I have from an existing have standpoint better? If I don't deploy the technology that way, and I say, hey, we'll just go live in phase 1, later phase 2, phase 3, we'll get to it, guess what? You will never get to it. You will software as a service vendors. You will do another implementation the exact same way. At the end of the day, we will not be leveraging the technology capabilities. Forget the technology that you're using. Think about how are you deploying it. That's what makes or breaks this at the end of the day. And as we see, Talent Management 1.0 has failed miserably in helping organizations have that visibility.
So what we're doing next is actually covering the portion of the survey where we asked respondents to tell us how significant some commonly cited challenges are to their organizations managing talent effectively. As Jason points out, a lot of these are related to people, process, technology, an afterthought in terms of levels of significance. But before we do that, wanted to ask you about your challenges in terms of managing talent effectively. So if you queue up the first polling question, great. Your organization's biggest challenges managing talent lie.
While people are answering this question, there's a couple of questions that have come in that I want to read. One of the first ones I'll pose to you is, how do you explain the conflicting stats regarding a revival of the war for talent? People are living longer, working longer, either because they have to or because they want to. Sort of suggests talent won't be exiting the workplace as rapidly as in the past. Indeed, the biggest age demographic in the workforce will be the 65 over population. Response to that, but I'll let you answer it first.
Well, yeah, that's certainly part of it. People are living longer and want to maintain a standard of living that is equivalent or better than what they've got today. Majority of the survey population, just as a reminder, from North America. So yeah, we are talking about graphics that in terms of the workforce. Yeah, a lot of us are getting older. Actually, all of us are getting older, but a lot of us who may have exited the workforce years ago won't. And both from an individual's point as well as the organizations, there's still a lot of tacit and explicit knowledge that person can use to better serve the organization. From a talent management perspective, what are you doing to make sure that knowledge is leveraged, shared, transferred, and so forth? So
I think that Mike, how I want to add to that is, you guys, the biggest challenge is most of those, and this is a very blanket statement, so put my asterisks in front of it. Most of those workers that we're talking about that are staying in the workforce longer, their skills, they have not kept up the skills. They have not kept up skills to be the types of workers that a lot of organizations need. So the concept, and that's why one of the things I say, and I said early on, is war for talent oftentimes gets mixed up with we don't have enough bodies. Plenty of bodies. They're working longer, agree. Having to work longer, agree. What we don't have are the right skills for tied to the fact that the business world has changed, and the world in general has changed so drastically in the last 10 years. Organizations, and we've had a lot of different factors, including a very bad recession, we have not kept up, nor do we necessarily think it's our job to train those people on those new skills needed to work in today's workforce.
Yeah, all good points. A question, Jason, on your comment about number of bodies, and the question came in from Jess about how successful companies implement technology to drive visibility into talent supplies. I'll take a first cut at it. I think that you start by asking what would a talent supply in an organization, what does that mean? What characteristics about individuals, about groups of individuals do you need to define that quote-unquote talent supply, or some would refer to as an inventory or bench strength? Jason, you had a number of bodies, or I think of a headcount report, number of heads. But organizations we work with, and I suspect listening today, want more than just the number of heads. Want to know what's in those heads, what experience they have, what potential they have, what they can offer the organization, what skills they bring to the table. So in terms of implementing successfully, I really do think it starts with asking simple questions, documenting those questions, and making sure that post-go live, that you're able to answer them. And then build on the list and answer new questions as business conditions change and so forth. And
the other thing that's important that ties back to how this survey just came out is where your organization's biggest challenges to managing talent lie? In the people and process. So, I mean, there could be much better validation to what I said a few minutes ago, whereas it, don't deal with the people stuff, and you don't deal with the process stuff, and all you do is the technology implementation, which is, no, we're not using that term. Implementation is technology only. Deployment includes all of these. If you don't deal with the people and process stuff before the technology, say, here's what I have visibility to, here's where data sits today, here's where it's going to sit later, and here's how I'm going to get that visibility, at the end of the day, you will give the technology a D to an F. Because you don't have focused on those other two things. So, the audience here, the people, just validated the fact that we've spent way too much time saying technology this, technology that. Hey, guess what? Oracle just bought so-and-so. Or buying someone is not, or a company staying independent is not going to solve this. What solve this is for us to get our heads out of the technology cloud and say, we need to focus on people and process. We need to understand for our organization what is it's going to give us the visibility, and choose a technology that makes the most sense. But if we're doing RFPs on feature function as to whether it can track X, Y, and Z, guys, we're never going to solve the problem.
Those who complete the poll here, it's really creepy that we at KI, when work clients, refer to a 40-40-20 approach. Focus 40% of your attention on the people, 40% on process, and the last 20% on the technology. And that's almost exactly how the polling results worked out here. So thanks for filling that out. So what's stopping your organization from managing talent effectively? We focused on quite a few commonly cited challenges. As I mentioned, raw survey data will be available. We'll make the deck available if you want to take a look at some of the statistics a bit more closely and analyze them. Those numbers on the left of the slide here. In terms of the takeaways, we're really looking at a good news, bad news scenario. Start with the good news. There's buy-in. Remember, I referred earlier to talent management as HR's at the table. Let's see, only 1 in 8 cited our leaders don't buy into talent management as a showstopper or a significant challenge. And I can speak to that personally when putting together talent and business cases for some clients. Sometimes it's just a matter of putting words on, making a presentation, speaking to things that folks can relate to as employees who want to manage a career at the organization and get the budget. Organizations, it takes a lot more than that, formal ROIs and things of that nature. But a lot of organizations, the leaders get it. This is a hindrance to business performance, the lack of available talent within the organization. Only 4 cited not having the money to invest as a showstopper or a significant challenge. Again, it just speaks to challenge, but to actually cite it fairly low on the list relative to some of these other challenges on the bottom of the slide to the bad news, saying something. More than 4 in 5 indicated that leaders don't know how to manage people as being at least one significant challenge. So in terms of the skills that Jason mentioned earlier, people not being trained, managers' pivotal role at all stations, management levels. Can they manage people? Once they've started that, can they move to the point where they're managing potentially several locations, a region, and so forth, more than one product line? Knowing how to manage people, that itself is a huge opportunity for all of us who are working on talent management initiatives. This second point, these can be reworded and turned into arguments for a justification in talent management and investments. These challenges are also opportunities. Last point, 4 and 5, inefficient or antiquated processes being at least a somewhat significant challenge. And we work with organizations all the time. Processes are no longer relevant. They're too complex. No one knows why we're doing them this way. So to Jason's point earlier, not throwing technology at a problem or an antiquated process and expecting a good outcome. This speaks to that. You need to work with the business to define what outcomes are and make to simplify the process. And back to our earlier discussion on data and analytics, make sure that you're able to get the data out of the processes that you need to report. A, not you're being successful, and B, to support decisions about people. So I thought we'd spend a little bit of time talking about how to address each of these challenges.
Let's go through that. Let's go to slide 15 real quick and go through that, Mike, if we could. I mean, if you look at slide 15 as to how to address these challenges, you know, 3 things to keep in mind. First of all, do your organization's managers know how to manage people? So we're not going to spend a lot of time on this right now. What's the link between qualified managers and business performance? What a good manager of talent looks like? Okay. Oftentimes managers still think of their jobs as giving a rating, 1-5. That's a talent manager. And then what are the realistic goals to putting these in place? So I can't just roll out a tool and expect managers to change overnight. How to set realistic goals to do that, and how to make sure that HR business partners are equipped to consult with the business around these things. So when I roll out any process and any technology, my business partners, the people that are closest to the managers, are they going to be your biggest champions or going to be your biggest problems? You have to get them to buy into this. It can't be a top-down thing. It has to be a bottoms-up approach. I don't have the data to tell you how talent should be managed. Tell the key stakeholders what data they need. Tell them why they can't have push-button analytics. One of the fascinating things to me, guys, is the number of organizations we work with that watch a vendor demo and the analytics. All of a sudden, when we go in to do the deployment, and we say, guys, you're not going to be able to get to that in phase 1 unless you do X, Y, and Z. They say, well, they didn't tell us that. The vendor's job when they're coming in doing a demo to assess where your data is. You know, Axor is only good at your data. It is not in a place where the analytics can pull them. Yes, you can't have data. You can't. Excuse me. If your data is a mess and don't have the data, guess what? You can't have analytics. The last thing, are your management processes inefficient or antiquated? Most talent management processes haven't been changed. We've talked about this for years. So what's the point of doing performance reviews once a year? Am I really doing performance management, or am I doing a performance appraisal to justify a merit increase? The guiding principle for talent management is helping link between your VP of HR's goal of talent management, which is in most cases, how do I turn those into processes, to then what technology helps enable that. And then how do I use future state processes and design future state processes that the business buys into. So to have the performance approval or performance management tool built into your Salesforce tool, I might look at using a tool like Ripple. To have performance management real-time in email, because most of my employees spend all day in email, I better that I'm looking at a tool that has integration to email. But future state processes with input from the business, meaning the business is saying, this is how we're going to use these processes. Because if all I do is develop my processes, then say to the business, guys, this is how you're going to do this from now on, more likely I'm going to get pushback, and I'm not going to get the tools and processes used that we're hoping to use them. Slide 17, we have this talent management process heat map. And I'd love for you to talk to this real quickly, because this is a tool we use with organizations to help them understand exactly where they are in talent management.
So this comes from the survey. So the green, yellow, red indicators of effective for green, needs minor enhancement automation, red needs significant change or overhaul. You see to these colors within the processes across talent acquisition, performance, and learning and development. These are based on the survey results. So there's a good amount of red on the slide. I'm not going to go through each of these in detail. But this indicates to me, none of this surprises me based on the work that we do on a day-to-day basis. Scenarios that Jason pointed out of, getting to see feature function with a technology and getting to see the one-stop shop for dashboards and scorecards. It's great. It's great to have the capabilities there, but until that processes, you're never going to get there. And the three ways that I would urge you to keep in mind if you're considering implementing such a system, as you focus on process, make it simpler. If you're even doing it today, performance management, it's typically a hub of talent management in many ways, and it's often one of the most misunderstood processes in organizations. So unity organizations should make what they're doing today even more simple. Second takeaway, determine what data you need to get out of the process. Are we collecting information on people's potential in addition to performance? Are we assessing the what and how? Focus on defining that. Are we tying it to compensation? Are we using it for prescriptive development? What are the objectives? Would absolutely focus there as well. And then number 3, make sure this validates it. The thing in the world is to have an engineer design a business process. Second worst thing in the world is to have a professional do it, if left to their own devices. Should shepherd the process and you get input from others.
Yeah, I completely agree, Mike, and I think that's great. So we've been talking a lot about talent management and talent management technology and talent management strategy. If we could launch the polling question, which is really asking you, do you, and we have people from VP, CEO level on this call, to analysts in the space. Does your organization, and when I say does your organization, that means do you understand as your organization what your strategy is for talent management? And once we make things simple, it's yes, I understand exactly my buy, build, have strategy. No, I understand it, or I don't know. Organization has one, which probably means you don't know. But let's get your response to that poll. There's another add-on question that's come in that I want to make sure that I hit on, and it ties back to that, the earlier around the discussion around, and the follow-up was, there's 250 young combat vets leaving military annually. How do we leverage that pool? And it's a really, really valid point, and I really appreciate the person that the question and made the comment making that point. Is we have to figure out how do we not recruit in typical methods. And typical methods, posting jobs and thinking everyone's going to go out and apply for jobs when people post them. But guess what? The way we write job descriptions, the way we post job descriptions, scares most people away. When I actually do have a lot of the capabilities in other talent pools, whether it be outside the United States or whether it be organizations like, people like vets coming back into the workforce that do have a lot of these skills. So I completely agree with your point, but it's how do I do it differently? How do I think differently about leveraging some of that talent? So it's a great add-on. So the poll, as we see, 30% said yes, I do, 6% said no, 12% said I don't know on the call here today. Mike, I'll let you talk about how that ties back to the poll that we did with HR Executive.
Yeah, to the same percentage of no's, which is if you're an HR professional working at one of these organizations, just from a job security perspective and as a shareholder, I would be disturbed by any organization that doesn't have a clearly articulated talent management strategy. Back to the table, to me, the seat is secured and insured, going basis. If you got a clear strategy that you articulate and then you can execute and refine on an ongoing basis. I mean, this needs to be part of the fabric of the business. And apologies if I'm getting a little too preachy, but in terms of the results of the survey, show that when we slide data by HR respondents versus respondents from outside HR, HR was even more, I don't want to say, well, critical, I'm not sure if that's exactly the right word, but that our organizations don't have one, and that is something that also needs to if differences are going to be successful and talent's going to be managed effectively.
Mike, there's a really interesting question that came in that I want to make sure I address that ties back to this. And so the question, I'm just going to read it to everyone because it really ties back into this whole issue. I don't think having dollars to invest is a challenge, but I don't know if decision makers have an understanding of the cost versus the value. I see the dollars at the end of the buying process to surprise people, slow down their buying timeline. Do you agree? I think what's really interesting about that question and just this overall discussion is talent management is not a module. I don't know how many times you can say that. Talent management is not a module. I have to sink in. It's not a technology that you buy. The reason I talked about the way we're deploying these tools early on is when you're doing anything related to talent management, you are deploying a strategy. You're creating a strategy, and you're being ability to execute that strategy. If all you're doing is pushing to buy a module, and you're not including your decision makers early on, and this is a big change in our organization. It's going to change our culture. It's going to make us more competitive long term. We're about to go to war with our competition on getting people, et cetera, et cetera. What you do is say, hey, we need a new performance tool, or we need a new comp tool, or we need a new recruiting tool. You're never going to see the value in that. Value in talent management does not come in a module. The value in talent management does not come in a project or a product. It comes in the ability to execute a strategy to beat your competition in the market in this concept of talent war or skills war or whatever we decide to call it. So the value will always surprise people if we don't do that. Extra cost. If this means, am I going to be able to continue to run the company? A no-brainer.
Slightly different or more tactical approach to answering that question, Jason. We do work with organizations on business cases, and we anticipate cost might be an issue, might slow things down. Even if engaged early on, a good way to address that is what might you be spending already on some of these things. So if you focus on the technology, well, what modules that you're paying maintenance fees on today are you able to take out as a result of this investment? And that's beyond just the technology. If talent management and a talent management strategy is the focus of the investment, well, if it's to develop better managers, how much money are we investing in development today?
The other thing, Mike, that's fascinating about that comment that you're having is people think that once they deploy their module, a soapbox day for me, sorry. Once they deploy their talent module, then they're done. The customers we work with in the middle of their quote-unquote deployment say we've run out of money. The interesting thing to me is that talent management never ends. This is like I'm going to put the module and I go live and then I'm done. You're budgeting money every single year, talent management, because your talent picture should change every single second of the day based on the supply and demand changes in your business. So talent management, people oftentimes budget money to buy a module and then they think, oh, we're done. You're going to be doing this forever. This is our job going forward, guys, is to help our companies win this war of talent.
Edgy today, Jason. I got to say, usually when I'm in San Francisco, I'm a little bit more easygoing, but
yeah, must not have been on the blah 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 last night. Sorry.
We asked who owns talent management in your organization, and presumably the strategy is as well. And the right answer to this question, and to me, the 42% who answered the question, a cross-functional team led by a senior talent management leader or head of HR is the answer. Some smaller organizations may not have, a senior leader of talent management, but may have someone who has stepped in that role, whose responsibility it is to manage a committee of cross-functional talent management experts from learning and development, from staffing, from compensation, and so forth. But this is the right answer. And in terms of that's one thing. Owning talent management strategy, that's one thing. Ultimately, the business needs to own it. Managers need to own it. Employees need to own careers, provided that the organization, i.e. HR and finance, technically, is making the investment in resources to help them manage their careers. So this slide speaks to management and governance, which we'll get to in just a moment. Jason, anything that you want to add to the results here?
No, I completely agree. And, the cross-functional team includes the business, as we've talked about. I just want to make sure we, keep that in people's mind. Not HR, but the actual business, how the organization actually makes money.
In terms of the governance piece of it, and again, back to the seat at the table analogy, it's actually tables. So HR and the cross-functional team, who owns the talent management strategy, means sitting at different tables. It means sitting at a table consulting with leaders outside HR. Both Jess and Center of Excellence leads need to do that. It means working with managers and people in positions to ensure that they buy into the strategy and that the business gets something out of it. Back to our point earlier about inviting the business in the design of HR and talent management processes. Those will be your biggest resistors and chins in the field when you're rolling out the program. So in addition to getting the dollars, need to get the hearts and minds of the workforce that this needs to be adopted for good as well as for the good of the organization. It also means, from a talent management perspective, from a management perspective, sit at a table with your colleagues. So back to HR generalists, L&D, compensation, retain. Discuss processes, how they need to integrate with one another. What data does the business need? What data do you need? How is that going to be managed? Talent management has to be done with a deep and broad understanding of business works and how people drive the business. So in terms of the benefits that you see here in the screen, we've seen this work. And it's not easy, but in terms of cross-functional governance as it relates to talent management, as I point out here in the header, governance is just a fancy word for decision making. Greater ability of management as a contributor to the employee value proposition. I mean, think to yourself, as an employee who gets out of bed to go to work every morning, understand how to manage your career at the organization. Are there clear career paths? It's easy to get to your total comp data. Is it easy to get to learning and development opportunities that may suit you in the role that you're in or the role that you aspire to? If you don't have this cross-functional governance up front, you'll wind up with, as a symptom, disjointed programs, disjointed systems. People know one talent brand from another. L&D's offering this. Multiple brands. I got my functional thing that's called one thing. I've got leadership development that's called something else. Compensation is called this, and it results in a very disjointed presentation to individual contributors and to managers that need to make better decisions for themselves, for their teams, and so forth. Presentation aligned with business needs. It slow things down a bit. It doesn't need to much. The prioritization, it's going to be a more thoughtful process, but not really something that needs to take a whole lot of time. I mean, if you're taking talent management seriously and it's a priority, they'll want to make decisions quickly. They'll push for it because they get less reinvention of the wheel, less money wasted on duplicative investments, software that lapse. Again, to the business case and how much the thing costs. Well, what instruments can we eliminate as a result of this strategy? And lastly, less resistance to change.
So before you sort of drive us home here into this sort of last, what are the takeaways on this governance piece? I'm sure that if you can spend a minute or two on that piece, and then we open it up for a few more questions. So if you guys have any questions at all, please submit them. And once again, the next webinar is going to be very, very focused on technology. So we're going to talk about vendors and the vendor specifics and things like that as far as what people are using, how they're using it, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to save that for the next webinar. But anything specific around strategy, governance, how to set yourself up for deployment would be great. And we'll answer those as soon as Mike brings this one slide up.
So with respect to strategy, you get the cross-functional group together, and they're in charge of different work streams, if you will, and putting together a strategy, a plan that spans a year, may span multiple years. Ones on the left that are function specific may not be function specific in your organizations, but these are some of the common ones. Performance management, for instance, may have a single owner. It may have multiple owners. Have input from lots of within HR, but there's not a single owner of the process, career development, compensation planning, learning management, talent acquisition. What plans for these respective process areas over the next year, the next 3 years, from a policy perspective, from a program perspective, from a process perspective, and lastly, from a technology perspective. Organizations that we work with, I don't have an easy time, but they certainly have an easier time with work streams on the left, and we, in helping them, have an easier time with them to navigate these things than all of us do with those work streams on the right, which tend to an owner that tend to rely more heavily than those on the left in input from multiple stakeholders across different functions within HR. So you see those data governance, service delivery, change management, job work, and competencies to serve as a foundation, job descriptions, Jason mentioned earlier, and succession and workforce planning with pivotal roles in the business, and are we planning our workforce and talent investments to meet our business goals.
Mike, so thank you for going through that. There's another question I want to get to that ties back to this, and it's a really interesting question. And once again, I'm just going to read it so I don't state it wrong. We are moving to an enterprise talent organization, integrating steps of talent management from recruiting, onboarding, all the way to learning and development. Is this a move you're seeing more of? And any insights as to why or why not? So once again, great question. Thank you for it. We are seeing much more of it. And, the insights as to why we're seeing more of it, and let me explain. We're integrating all of these things together under one leader, one organization, makes that there's a holistic set of processes based goals across a large enterprise or any organization. What it is, it's truly giving you training wheels. Hopefully everyone knows what training wheels are. As someone with a small child, I do. I can't really fall off the bike. Now I can if I take too sharp of a turn, or if I go too fast, or I'm going down a gravel driveway. But it's much harder to fall off the bike if I've got training wheels in place than I don't. Okay, so why organization is doing that? Because it starts to integrate together processes. It creates lines of connectivity across all of these things that eliminate the other possibilities for gaps or falling off the bike. The not, and the why not, and the why this doesn't always work, is all of organizations that do that still don't know where they're going. So they get on the bike, they've got the training wheels, but they have no idea what they're trying to do because they don't have the strategy, and they'll end up spinning their wheels. I hate that pun, but spinning the wheels. It's great to move to it. It's great to spend the time to integrate, and by doing that, you are going to have, similar to an order to cash, model in the supply chain of product, you're going to have a recruit, transition to continue to grow the organization in the talent management space. Okay, it's going to get you there. Where organizations struggle is they spend all that time and money getting there without knowing where they're headed long term, and all of a sudden they've realized they've built something that can't get them to the promised land. So just as a caution. Hopefully that's helpful for the person who asked the question. Mike, do you have anything to that?
As a sneak peek to webinar number 2, we are seeing it more, and that key technology integration point on acquisition, recruiting, onboarding, 2 elements that we'll cover in the next webinar.
Yeah, and correct me if I'm right, I think this whole the concept that this person was saying is all the way from recruiting to and development, including things like performance, succession, comp, all of those areas.
Yeah, I'd love to clarify, but yeah, getting the data from recruiting and onboarding, and that's everything from demographics to maybe pre-hire assessments that are done to identify opportunities for development and making sure that that's forward with them.
Let's see, any other questions that, Mike, that you have out there? One of the questions that came in earlier before we started that I just want to make sure we get to is, a question came in around, the whole discussion around Gartner's latest report around, which clearly summarizes end of life for PeopleSoft EBS, not to mention sooner for Leo, et cetera, et cetera. During the next webinar, we'll get into much more detail around the specific technologies. One of the things that we wanted to try it out of this webinar was to start with the findings that show that technology is not the answer here. It's Oracle, Workday, SuccessFactors, Cornerstone, unless I name the vendor. Sorry if I left out the vendor or multiple vendors, which I did. Unless you spend the time on knowing your strategy, where you're going, getting your organization for it, and doing it before you start your implementation. At the end of the day, the technology is not going to matter. If you start the implementation without those things done, what you're going to find is you're going to be forced into decisions without your whole organization together, and you're pouring cement that dies, and all of a sudden you're stuck with it. So you can see webinar part 2, what we'll cover, continues to invest in the cloud. Why? And we'll talk a lot about agility there. Team management becoming more social and mobile, just like the workforce. Why that important? And once again, attending both webinars, the chance to win a free portable charger, good prizes for attending these things. So please keep asking questions, and please continue to interact. For those of you that are in Dallas, tomorrow morning in Dallas, we're doing our first KI on Tour event, which is a really interactive discussion about building HR, ATM, talent management strategies, and how to use technology to enable those. So any of you in Dallas, drop me an email if you want to attend, and would love to have you tomorrow morning in Dallas for a live session. Mike, any words?
No, folks, I'm just really appreciate folks attending and look forward to getting together again in a few weeks.
Turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Jason. And thank you, everyone, for joining. In just a second, we're going to have both Jason and Mike's contact information on the screen. We encourage you to please reach out to them directly if you have any questions or comments specific of the material covered in today's discussion. And again, we will be sending all attendees an email with instructions on how to download both the slides as well as a replay and get access to that raw data that Mike was referring to earlier on in the discussion. So, all of us at Knowledge Infusion, thanks again for joining, and we hope you guys have a great day.